Hey tubers, it's Ben the Curious Consumer. It's been a while, and welcome to my new studio space. In January of 2023, Sony released the DualShock Edge controller. This controller right here, at a hefty price. Trying to compete with the likes of Microsoft and their Microsoft Elite controllers, Sony has decided to create their own Elite controller. It came inside of a hard shell case, and inside this case, it came with all sorts of different parts. You had thumbsticks, you have the back port buttons here for the triggers on the back. It actually came with a wired component here that you can plug in and actually attach it to your computer if you wanted to, or your PlayStation. And it had a top little port here that pops open and you can charge your controller right through the top. Really cool. $200 was the starting price for this thing. This controller, hands down, probably one of the coolest controllers. You've got a lot of functionality here. You've got some trigger stops that you can either do the long pull, a medium pull, or a very short pull. So when you're playing a game like Call of Duty or games that are shooters, this thing really works wonders. There's actually some heft to this controller as well. It is quite heavy. And one of the coolest features about this controller was the ability to fix what Sony would like to think of as fixing the ongoing problem with any controller is that stick drift, just by taking out these components. So if you can get your finger on there, the cover will pop off, and then these sticks right here can actually, you lift up on this little metal bracket, comes out, and then the stick piece, the stick module, comes out. And you can replace this. It's very easy to do. When you want to put it back in, you just put it along the slide tracks, push it in, and pull down, and now it's in place. You put that cover back on, and you're ready to go. At $19 a pop, those thumbsticks typically on any controller are the first things to go. So if you get stick drift, if you don't want to take apart your controller, this was a great way to do it, where you could buy the little components for $19 if you could find them. And typically they're available on the Sony website, and you could replace those parts. Now, there are ways to fix those little components without having to pay the $19 to get a replacement. However, just grab one of those, throw it in there, and it'll work. Over time, that $19 adds up. A $200 controller, $19 a piece for those parts. Well, there were other components that Sony didn't think about when it came to things that break down on these controllers. Be your thumbsticks, the pads that go on the back here will peel off, and there's no way to glue those back down. Actually, four things. Your bumpers on the back where the triggers actually go. There are these little areas, little pieces inside of the controller that actually hold the trigger. Let me show you. Yeah, so if I have it here, I can press the button, and that trigger goes and presses a button inside the controller. Great functionality. However, the piece inside that holds this mechanism breaks. And underneath that is a bigger component, is a button inside here. That button sometimes frays or pops because of hard usage. Sometimes that button will actually, the membrane around it will actually break, and then that button doesn't work anymore, which becomes a problem because two things happen. I've had this happen to me where the button just doesn't work, or it actually causes your controller to malfunction, where it'll start pulling to one side, giving you a created stick drift that doesn't actually exist, or presses another button because it's short-circuiting the little board that's on the inside. So today, on this controller specifically, board that's on the inside is actually broken. And if I plug that board in, it actually short circuits the controller and causes the controller not to work properly. So today we're going to go into the controller and we're going to replace those parts. First things first, you want to take off your cover, which I just showed you. Very easy. You just pull this little button and that cover comes right off. You're then going to want to take out your sticks by pulling up these metal brackets and putting those off to the side. And then you're going to want to pull off this whole piece here, and you're going to need a couple of tools for this. There you go. And then now that piece comes right off, put it to the side. Yeah, it looks like I took out that little bumper piece, but inside here you can kind of see, inside here you can kind of see the button of where that sits. There's usually a little bracket here that holds that button in, or that trigger, and then there's one there. All right, I'm gonna put down a mat so I can keep track of my screws. I'm gonna grab my small screwdriver, and there are a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws on the back here, and I believe we still have the screws up top. So let's see if we can get in there and take those buttons out. Yep. And then there's the screws up at the top, like a typical PlayStation 5 controller, or if you haven't seen a tutorial on how to take apart your PlayStation 5 controllers, typically you take off this little bottom piece. There's a screw down at the bottom, and then two screws at the top. This one has a bunch more screws. So let's get this thing apart, and we'll see what we're working with on the inside portions. The darker, longer screws go in the edges here. So you want to make sure you keep track of your screws, because if you don't, when you go to put it back together again, you could cause damage to either the threads, or if you screw too hard, you could screw right through the controller plastic. Oh yeah, we got to take off this bottom piece, which you want to be careful because there's a spring right here. So there's a spring right here you got to be super duper careful with. And this bottom button comes up and out, and then you just hold on to that little piece. You want to not lose that spring, otherwise that button doesn't work. And that uncovers two more screws right there. So once you start doing that, this will start to separate, and it is the backing of the controller. And you could use your spudger to kind of come up the edges. Just put a little bit of pressure there. And then, like I said, be very careful with those little plastic pieces, and you'll see one of them is probably going to fall out. I'm not gonna lie about that. So I've already taken this controller apart once before, because I've had that issue. See, one of them did come off. So this little plastic piece here is sitting right here on my controller, and that just slides in underneath the other one there. So I'm just going to put it there for now. I'm going to have to slide that back in because it is a specific way that goes. We'll get to that after. All right. So the main culprit here is under here. You can see I have one of those pieces in place, and that's where that trigger holds. And then this one here doesn't have that piece. I've taken that piece out because it was broken and it was rumbling inside. And those break pretty easy because it's only two little pieces of plastic that hold it on the sides, and it rocks back and forth. But underneath that, this board, that little board right there, is the culprit for why the button on this side of the controller doesn't work. Now, this is where certain companies pay attention to what their customers need. And because of this, there is one company out there that has actually paid attention and has reached out to the community and looked at what is the part that needs to be fixed the most, and it's one of those. So that company is Extreme Rate, and they have finally created a replacement part for that board. So they've created replacement boards, and for 15 bucks, you get, I think it's 4 boards. We'll take a look right now. You get a whole kit to fix this problem, as well as Extreme Rate also makes the replacement parts for those pieces that fit inside here. Let's get inside here. They give you all sorts of things, the tools, the spudgers, the screws, replacement screws if you need them. But it's these boards that we're looking for. These boards right there are the ones that we are looking for to replace the inside components. Now we just have to make sure we find the right one here. And it's just a simple piece like this. And you can see right there, that little, oops, let's see if I can get you in there. That little part right there is the culprit. When that little part breaks, it causes so many issues on that controller. So I think I only need to replace the one side. And then what I'll do is I'll have to go and find the other piece to replace that little bumper there. And it's unfortunate, because it's a $200 controller and it's such a small part, and they don't make replacement parts for this. You actually have to get them on your own. So I'm gonna go find that part that I need, and I will be right back. All right, well, let's take a look and see what we got going on here. Here's the old components that I had in there prior to. And on this piece, you'll see that I got a couple pieces that are broken. But I did, I believe, save all the parts, including the ribbon cable that used to hold that component together. This is the new piece that should be under there that will rock back and forth. The reason I never installed that piece was because the other piece broke. And that little black piece right here is the piece that sits right on the edge of here. And those little pieces snap. They're supposed to be covered with these plastic white pieces like that. And that snaps this piece, and then that causes the button not to work anymore. But also, once I take off this piece here, you're going to see what that looks like. Now, I'm going to show you what that button looks like. And if you can kind of see it here, you see that that button there is broken, like bad, like pushed in. And if you look at what it's supposed to look like, it's supposed to look like that lovely golden color there. That's what it's supposed to look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this if I can get it out. I think it might be in there with an adhesive. So we're going to see if we can't get this little chip out. Yeah, it's held in with a little adhesive. And I'm just putting my flathead screwdriver just underneath. And you can hear the adhesive like letting go. And that's it. That's it. That's all that was. And so I am going to take the new one. I'm just going to put it in its place and use the same adhesive that was already there. Why not, right? There you go. New piece. I'm excited. All right, so that's going to go on. I'm going to plug it. Actually, I won't plug it in yet. I've got to get the other button back in. This part is going to require me to put my glasses on. So, readers, here we go. All right. So, taking a look at this piece here, this little arrow piece is supposed to be underneath that metal piece. So, it should be underneath like that. But I got to put these little white pieces on first and make sure that they're facing down. No. This is never the fun part. I don't have my tweezers. Should probably get my tweezers. All right. Okay, that is in position. Ooh, I can hear it. That sounds fantastic. Now let's put this guy back on. And this guy goes just like that. Keep in mind there is a magnetic piece inside there, so that's going to cause that like screw to move. Wow. To think that these glasses work great. So much better when you do it with glasses on. Actually see what I'm doing. Perfect. All right. Got that back on there. Sounds like it's working. I'm not going to replace the other board yet, but I am going to plug this in. Hopefully we don't get any issues there. And then I am going to plug this back in. I got to flip up that little piece. You see here, I got to plug in this little ribbon cable, lock it down with that little lock on top, and then this little ribbon cable goes into place like that. You push down on the blue tab. And now we're back up and running with this piece. This is going to make this controller work again. So let's take a look around, make sure there's nothing else that's a problem in here. Press the button, That works. That sounds good. I think we're good. Let's get back to putting this back together. So what I'm doing right here is this little dust cover here fell out. So I have to get it underneath the dust cover that's right there. So you see there's another dust cover there. This one's underneath. So this one has to be underneath as well. Typically you're able to just slide it, but in this case, it's not working. So I'm gonna try to get underneath it to lift it a bit and just slide that one under enough like that, so I can just slide it into place, and now we're good to go. That's that. Let's install the back triggers, if you will. Here's one. There's two. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you fix the board for the back bumper. This was the one that was giving me the problem. It's nice and tight, and that's it. Fix this, and now you can remap your buttons again on your $200 controller. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is how you fix the components inside. Again, using the parts from a company called Extreme Rate. They do make quality parts for different things. So if there are other projects you want to look into, take a look on Amazon. I'm going to leave a link in the description below for these parts specifically, because I know these parts are parts that are really tough to find. And that's going to do it for us today, guys. I do appreciate you stopping by. I know it's been a while. Super excited. Now I'm going to go play some games. I do appreciate you stopping by. If you guys have any questions or ideas for the channel, please leave them in the comments down below. Again, guys, remember, stay curious, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.